get Christian Ponder.
Let's forget about who they passed on. This kind of value at the 12th spot, there is none. Tom, I know you like this guy. He may be ready to start soon, but this has got to be the most surprising element that's happened so far.
Oh, absolutely. We almost jumped out our seats when we saw Jake Locker go 8, but Christian Ponder at 12, you mentioned he's got the value there. He's got the productivity in college, and that's something you always got to weigh, but the injury concerns are too great here with the number 12 pick in the draft. It's too big of a gamble to mess up here.
Joey, if this was 2010, I might have told you that Christian Ponder would have been a good pick. He was on a Heisman watch list for a while coming into the season, but he barely has an arm anymore. You're picking Chad Pennington 10 years into Chad Pennington's career. I don't understand. Definitely not the value at 12, especially with guys like Prince Amukamara, Robert Quinn still on the board. I just don't get it.
Tom, is this an issue where they had isolated Christian Ponder as the guy all along, or were they sad and confused that Blaine Gabbert and Jake Locker were off the board here?
See, I got to think this is a panic move because you got to think they had to think Jake Locker at least was still going to be there. And then Blaine Gabbert sliding down the board. Maybe there's a chance they can get him. But Christian Ponder, Josh Norris has him ranked as the 7th quarterback on his board. The possibility of having him go as the 4th quarterback, the 12th overall pick, when you still have Nick Fairley and Prince Amukamara and Robert Quinn still on the board, I don't understand it.
Well, let's look at the number 13 pick in the NFL draft, the rival for the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions have an unfamiliar feeling of optimism after the 2010 season in which they went 6-10. The reason for that optimism? The new, refreshing leadership of head coach Jim Schwartz and a young core that looks to have the talent to lead the Lions in a promising new direction. A young, gifted quarterback whose rocket arm and hunger for victory are contagious among fans and players. A physical freak and game-changer wide receiver whose natural talent looks as if it were manufactured, earning him the name Megatron. And a defensive terror for opposing quarterbacks. His name means House of Spears, but it's pronounced Andamacon. Stafford, Johnson, Sue. Who is the next piece for the Detroit Lions?
We have something unprecedented from Charlotte now. Let's go down and look at what David Hodges has. First, David, so much confusion here at the 2011 NFL Draft, back up here in Elon with Christian Ponder being the number 12 overall selection. The Detroit Lions on the board now. We know we'll have something from you in a few minutes, but Tom, I have to go back to you for a minute here. The Minnesota Vikings with Christian Ponder at number 12. How do you make sense of this?
I really don't, because we mentioned they needed a quarterback, obviously, with Brett Favre now retiring, and they needed help along the offensive line. Had two quarterbacks, Tavares Jackson and Brett Favre, both getting hurt. So you thought, obviously, maybe you're going to bump with the offensive line. Maybe take a best player available here with the outstanding corner, outstanding pass rusher, outstanding guy in the middle. But to take a quarterback, one that's not even that high on our boards, at least here, I just don't understand the move, especially at that point. Why not trade down a few picks? There's obviously not that big of a rush for a quarterback here in the 12 to 18 range.
Well, that's certainly true, Tom, and we never expected we'd see somebody as surprising as Jake Locker that early, but then Christian Ponder goes at 12. Will we see something even more surprising at number 13 from the Detroit Lions?
With the 13th pick of the 2011 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Nick Fairley, defensive tackle, Auburn.
The Detroit Lions have to be thanking their lucky stars that Nick Fairley, someone who is being talked about a potential number 1 pick for months, has fallen all the way to number 13, Tom.
Absolutely, Joe. When you look at a guy like Nick Fairley, this guy was an absolute monster his junior year at Auburn. His ability to collapse the pocket and just get in there and hit the quarterback is unbelievable. He's extremely quick. He plays with a mean streak and had tremendous production levels, as you mentioned, talked about as a potential number 1 pick and is leading Auburn all the way to the BCS title game this year. This is a good fit for them and an extremely good value at this position.
Joey, I'll tell you what, the first time the Detroit Lions maybe have ever scared opponents could be this coming year with their rush defense. Their two defensive tackles now are Nick Fairley and Demikong Suh.
Oh my
Possibly
goodness.
the two best defensive tackles of the past 2 drafts are going to play right next to each other in Detroit. Out of this universe for Detroit, they cannot believe that Fairley fell this low. Their rush defense is going to be extremely formidable. I would hate to be Adrian Peterson in Detroit next year. Who knew I was going to say that?
That is truly terrifying. Nick Fairley drawing some Ndamukong Suh comparisons this year. Well, guess what? Now Detroit has them both. We foreshadowed it earlier. Something unprecedented now from Charlotte, North Carolina. David Hodges, what do you have for us?
Guys, we're here in Bank of America Stadium where the media just had the chance to talk with the #1 overall pick, Cam Newton. He talked a lot about his competitiveness, and that's not just against the teams he's going to have to play against next year, but that's within the team. Competition to get on the field, and of course who he's going to be competing with is the high draft pick from last year, Jimmy Clausen, who actually just on his Twitter page with Cam Newton, the best of luck and congratulations on joining the Carolina Panthers. Also, just before we talked to Cam Newton, we were speaking with Coach Ron Rivera and General Manager Marty Herney here in the media room, and they were raving about Cam Newton's physical abilities, his abilities to throw and run the ball, as well as he did in college, 50 touchdowns. And they said that's what really made him the #1 overall pick. When we talked to Cam about what it was he was going to have to improve on to get the opportunity to play, it was preparation, working with the coaches. He's got the tools, guys. Now he's just got to translate to that NFL readiness. Back to you in the studio.
David, thank you very much. It was mentioned by you that Jimmy Clausen shouted out to Cam Newton on Twitter, congratulations, welcome to the team. But let's look at the obvious here, guys. Jimmy Clausen was supposed to be the quarterback of the future, and the Carolina Panthers now feel that their #1 need is at the quarterback position. How do you feel if you're Jimmy Clausen? We talked about David Garrard, but Jimmy Clausen thought he was the guy.
Not much for job security there. Certainly when you're congratulating the guy who's going to take your job, especially when you have a guy, Cam Newton, who mentioned #1 overall pick in the draft. Expectation level, obviously, they did not think Jimmy Clausen got the job done, and certainly they don't believe he's the guy for the future there. So very awkward situation, as you mentioned. We're going to see how it shakes out.
Joey, if I am by far the worst analyst on this show, and you guys go ahead and draft an analyst, should I be surprised? He was 32nd in passing last year. He did not live up to even half of the expectations that Carolina was expecting from Jimmy Clausen. He should have seen this coming, and hey, put a chip on your shoulder, Jimmy Clausen. Do your best to get as much as you can out of this. Carolina is not the only team in the NFL. You may get yourself another shot somewhere. If he lets this kill him, though, then...
So you're saying he deserved it. That's cruel, Bill.
Yes, I'm saying he deserved it. Did you watch the Carolina Panthers last year, Joey? Jimmy Clausen kind of deserved it.
That was cruel. Number 14 pick belongs to the St. Louis Rams, narrowly missing the playoffs in the 2010 season.
After narrowly missing the playoffs with a 7-9 record in 2010, St. Louis Rams fans should head into the 2011 season with a sense of confidence, something they haven't had since the greatest show on turf won Super Bowl 34. The Rams return with a strong starting backfield, with Offensive Rookie of the Year Sam Bradford handing the ball off to powerhouse running back Steven Jackson. Bradford completed an NFL rookie record 354 passes in 2010. As Bradford looks to progress as an NFL quarterback, the Rams hope to find a big play receiver, as Rams receivers ranked last in the league in average yards per reception. Defensively, the Rams have a solid foundation in place. Led by middle linebacker James Laurinaitis and defensive ends Chris Long and James Hall, the Rams defense allowed only 32 touchdowns on the year, good enough for 4th in the league. The Rams will use this draft to further strengthen their defensive line as they look to reclaim their seat at the top of the NFC West.
Though missing the playoffs, the 2010 St. Louis Rams were in many ways the sweethearts of the season. Greg and Kurt, we turn to you once again. Which side of the ball do they need more help on to make the playoffs in 2011?
Thanks again, Joey. Kurt, the question is again, what side of the ball do the Rams need to get better help for?
See, what they need is the offense. They need to help out the young quarterback in Sam Bradford. They need to get him some. What do you mean no? They need to get him some kind of a receiving option. They need to get him something. They have to help out somehow. It'd be a great pick to get Mike Pouncey here. Get a guard. It's too early for Pouncey, though. There's too many good defensive players left on the board. I think that's where they have to go because of the lack of the offense right now.
Because there's such talented defensive players. We've seen so many great guys.
See, but they need
Robert Quinn's, Prince Mukamara's drop at this point. You need to go with one of these high talent guys rather than fill a need in some areas. I always suggest going with best player available rather than filling at need in situations like this. And let's face it, the Rams, while they were very close to making the playoffs, were 7-9. They were a losing team.
Okay, see, the question was, what do they need to address the most? And that is the offense. At this point, though, the way the draft has fallen, there's more defensive players, more value at this pick. Unless they want to trade back and draft a guard, but